Hi, everybody. Welcome back to EDBEAT. This is not the sound of my laundry in the background. Oh, no, no. You can't hear it at all. I'm April Cummings, everybody. This is Cayman Life TV, and joining me today, there are two lovely gentlemen. See, I did exactly the opposite of what I said I did, didn't I? Patrick Brendel, of course, as always, from Cayman Current, and in the Brady Bunch below, Brady Bunch box, is Jim Urquhart from Cayman International School. Hey, Jim.
Hi, good morning.
It is
Thanks
so
for
good
having me, April.
We're so glad to have you with us. You've got so much stuff to talk about. Patrick, why don't you get things kick-started with Jim, and then I'm going to go and pull up the website from CIS so we can see how beautiful it is. And it is.
Yeah, good morning. So just a little introduction on what we're doing here is we're starting a new kind of little segment on EDBEAT where we talk to principals in the Cayman Islands schools. And they're going to give us kind of a little update on what's going on in their individual school. And if anybody thinks this is a good idea, which I do, it's probably because it's not my idea. This idea actually came from a teacher who sent me a message asking asking if we ever considered talking to principals. And I thought, good idea, I'll steal it. So here we are. And Jim Urquhart is the principal of Cayman International School, and he's graciously agreed to be our guinea pig. So he's our first principal guest on EDBEAT.
Oh, I wasn't aware I was the guinea pig. Okay. Make sure my shirt's straight.
And just so everyone knows, Jim's getting ready for November. So this is why he looks he's starring in a Western right now. So, Jim, let's talk a little bit about, so I've been to the new high school. I was there just a couple of months ago. And my area of focus was, I really like things related to auditoriums and sound systems and all these sorts of things. And I was just really impressed at the entire layout of the campus and all of the things that you guys are working on. Can you share with folks a little bit about what you're doing? And Kat's about to walk through shot. Oh, we didn't capture her. Just talk a little bit about the campus and how integral a part it is to the school and the work that you're doing there.
Sure, absolutely, April. Less than 24 months ago, our campus was just the one building. The old building, which I prefer to be called the classic wing. And the school was fortunate enough to expand to have a purpose-built early childhood building, and most recently, as you mentioned, the opening of our new high school building, which officially opened last January. Having this extra space allows us to have a broader holistic program for our students, which is fantastic. It allows us to expand programming in the arts and STEAM, as well as to maintain and continually improve what we're currently doing in the International Baccalaureate program, as well as programming not related to the International Baccalaureate. One of the big benefits so far, despite, I guess this little spike in COVID, has also allowed us to reach out to the community to be able to provide location for arts opportunities, whether they be for students, which is obviously our focus, but also to the community, such as the Cayman National Orchestra and National Choir as well, which is important because arts brings us together. Obviously, the athletic facilities stand out too, and certainly sport is an important part of bringing people together. But we also want to be able to emphasize the arts and sciences, technology, as well as the works that's happening in engineering and maths.
So I, in particular, I just was really impressed by the sound. I'm excited about this still, Patrick. And the cat is going to keep walking in and out of this because I didn't think to trap her upstairs. Just the way that you have some of this designed is optimal for people who are interested in the performing arts. It's incredible, really. Some of the design elements are, I don't think that even professionally I've seen places designed as well as this.
Oh, it's fantastic to hear.
It is. It's really lovely. It does show a commitment to providing sort of that, as the Cayman Islands government likes to say, world class
Mhm.
facility. How important is you invest not just in the teachers and in the learning, but in the infrastructure as well?
Oh, absolutely. The structural components do add to programming. The initial awe and maybe a sense of pride, but also it does enhance the desire to have a greater sense of polish. And in the case of, say, the arts, our band performances, it allows people to maybe sit up a little bit straighter, practice a little bit extra, so that what's happening with the people is commensurate with what people might see as a new design. So it's a mixture of both that adage of if you build it, they will come. There is certainly some truth to that. And I think it's still important to note that schools are about people and community. And so if something terrible were to happen and a school didn't have access to such facilities, we're still able to function and have that important part of, community is built by people, not necessarily buildings. And having a fantastic facility adds to that for sure.
Yeah, and so the growth at CIS hasn't just been new buildings; it's also been new students. Can you talk a
Right.
little bit about how much CIS has grown in, say, the past 12 to 18 months?
Sure. Yeah, we're fortunate enough that our enrollment today is 17% higher than it was this time last year. Um, we, and particularly in the high school, obviously now that we have more space, we're able to open up some of our weight pools to be able to have more students come in. And so that growth, we like to think that growth is a combination certainly of space, but also programming at the school, as well as the Cayman Islands as a place for Caymanians to stay, love, and enjoy, and also for expatriates to move here. So our enrollment increase kind of is a combination of multiple items. Some a higher percentage of people, I think, remaining in the Cayman Islands. And so our return percentage of students was extremely high going into this school year. We also had some migration from other schools on island. And as far as sifting through old documents, this appears to be the first school year where there has been a net migration from boarding schools around the world, where students are actually leaving those institutions and coming here to the island, as well as I think other schools have also benefited from the global citizenship concierge program, where we have had some families move here, which has added, I think, to our increase in enrollment. We're planning for the increase in enrollment, but it's a little bit higher than we expected, which is great.
What a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's true, April and Patrick. It is a good problem to have, and now we have the challenge of that, of course, is having to say no to some applicants, and sometimes that's people who are here on island, and sometimes it's people who are in the midst of moving here, and we know that schooling is one of the key things that people look at to move. So we're trying to work through that good challenge as delicately as possible, knowing that people are looking to move here if they're foreigners, that they move and pick up their lives. And if a family was moving here, say from another part of the island, too, the challenges related to that, moving to a new school in a place that you know, from a place that you know and love, is sometimes more difficult than moving from another country.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And Patrick loves how I go off on my personal tangents, but I went from, I think it was Savannah primary to Triple C, right, at like 13 or something. And even
Right.
though it turned out to be a wonderful experience back in the day, it also was challenging. It's, just trying to be comfortable and fit in. maintain relationships. I don't know why this is so critical when you're a teenage girl, but it's a problem. And so actually understanding that that is a challenge for students is something that I think is, I'm going to study better if I'm happier. That's just how it rolls, you know?
Yeah, we know that when we're happy, we tend to study better, rest better, exercise more, eat right, sleep right, and engage in more of what we do. Obviously, easier said than done. And I think your point, April, when you switched schools, I've been fortunate to serve at 5 different international schools in the last 27 years, and having children growing up, my own children who grew up in international schools, and seeing families from all these different places. I've noticed that usually when people move to a new place, it's easier to adapt and adopt a new home than moving to, say, a new school, or people moving to a new diplomatic mission, a new corporation, because I think in people's minds, we think, well, it's my place of work, it's my place of study. There's going to be a lot of similarities, but there's nuanced differences. And I think that catches people off guard when, if you move to a new country and it's a different language or different stores and so on, you know that's going to happen. Usually we're surprised.
Different mindset. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So is CIS at maximum capacity now? If not, how much more space do you have, and is the limiting factor staffing up?
Yeah, so right now we're at maximum capacity due to a combination of space and staffing. Though we have more space for more students once we increase staffing. So today in the elementary school, so from kindergarten to grade 5, we are at maximum capacity, and the same in middle school, grade 6 through 8. The case is true too for our early childhood program, as well as grade 9 and 10. In grade 11 and 12, we do have some space, though we have these larger cohorts moving up. And usually in schools in grades 11 and 12, in our case, we're doing the International Baccalaureate program, but in grades 11 and 12 in high schools, there's a bit more flexibility and creativity that can be done with the schedules. So in a case where you might be full, it might depend on children's choice of programming, where there might be spaces in specific courses still, even if the absolute size of the class is at maximum. So we're right now today 947 students school-wide. We do project that we have space in the future for 1,080 students. And today we could grow a little bit more if we were able to take people off the wait pool. But that's right now a staffing item, which we're in the throes of planning for the next school year right now.
Well, it's amazing to me, because I recently updated a graphic I'd done on the enrollment and capacity of public schools,
Right.
And just how few spaces there are in almost all the schools on island, particularly at the secondary level.
Mm-hmm.
When kind of the common wisdom in the past was things opened up in high school compared to elementary as children went off to boarding school and maybe families moved away. But, you know, if we're going to add 30,000 more people or whatever they want to do to this island, the physical space in schools is a huge limiting factor.
Yeah, for sure. There's going to be pressure on space and pressure on finding staffing, whether from here on island or off island. A challenge I think that all the schools are struggling with, and it's not unique to Cayman Islands, but I think more acute in the Cayman Islands, is the cost of living relative to those of us who choose to serve in education and certain realms of health, certainly in the media. That's going to be, that's not me sucking up. I know. a
We don't
reality.
mind.
It's okay. We've
Well,
totally.
look at April's kitchen. Come on.
Yeah, April seems to be, yeah,
I'm living large
yeah.
here. You can't see the yard though.
But that will be a challenge uh, going forward
Yeah.
for sure, as the people who may come here, or Caymanians currently living here, may be in position, maybe with more financial resources, but the costs associated with living for those of us in, say, more, I like to think of education as kind of an essential infrastructure where we need to have it. We need to have health. We need to have education. We need to have journalism. We need to have those types of support, and they tend to be more labor of love elements in some cases, and they're hard for countries to maintain, because the rise in costs associated in those areas tend to exceed the wages, and in turn the cost of living here is going to be a problem. So 5, 10, 15 years, even 1 year from now will be tricky, because I know we haven't talked about COVID yet, but we do know that there's a dearth of substitute teachers on the island. I think that'll be a growing issue for our public and private schools.
So already dealing with the challenge of a country with a high cost of living, it's exacerbated currently because of the global state of things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then you have to factor in, as you've touched on, COVID, which means sometimes all of a sudden out of the blue, you could have 6 teachers who have to go home. So you have to have a more flexible and wider pool of people,
Mm-hmm.
particularly from a country that has a pretty limited population base.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that it is important to have in-person teachers, how are you able to integrate virtual learning? I don't just mean locally, but I mean perhaps using some international resources to help bolster in that type of situation. Sorry, this was something that just popped into my head as you were talking.
Well, right now, similar to last year, where the Ministry of Education and the government prioritized in-person learning, which we certainly agree with, and that's the case still right now, which is fantastic. And we've prioritized our resources to do all we can to remain in person. And so in the case of your example, April, with say if 5 or 6 teachers are out, and to find a substitute teachers, what we've done is some are regular substitute teachers. We've asked them just to come in every single day, whether we know we have a confirmed need or not, because we recognize that probably midway through the day we may have that need. If those resources become exhausted, we're leaning on certainly our incumbent staff too, where the teachers that might have a prep period then would be covering. I had the pleasure of teaching a couple classes yesterday, so those of us in roles that may not have a typical teaching load will be increasing those responsibilities, which is great. It brings that community feel and the notion that it takes a village, but we know it is wearing down staff and teachers, and we know parents too. Different things are hanging over people's heads, and we know that there's a level of perceived exhaustion and maybe a level of tiredness that people don't perceive but feel it in different ways. So but that's our protocol that we're using so far. If it came, worst case scenario, to remain in person, we'd have to look at modifying some programming where allow for other teachers that are currently doing say different support services would then need to move into more regular classroom setting. We hope that we don't get there, but that's kind of our cascade in our plan. should it become very acute to cover classes. And in the meantime, doing our best to keep morale and a positive school culture up in the midst of people doing that additional work, and knowing that in their home lives too, they have the same wonderings that we all have as parents or citizens here in the Cayman Islands.
Now, I think I promised 5 to 10 minutes, so we're way over. But
oh no,
He's delighted to be here. Stop.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be here, Patrick and April, because it means the questions at the door, I can say, hey, I'm on an important call.
A very important interview.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah. So I guess one thing I did want to talk about, and you've talked about it more in the bigger picture, but can you give us a kind of a snapshot of how COVID's going on at CIS right now?
Sure.
And I'm interested in how the lateral flow testing policy and this idea of entering surveillance as opposed to mandatory automatic isolation. How's that working for you guys? Are you seeing a lot of COVID? How's your testing kit supply?
Yeah. Well, first, we're grateful that Public Health and Ministry of Education and the government are supplying schools with lateral flow tests. The supply is limited. I think we, as everybody here on the island, have been surprised by how quick this spike has happened. We at CIS were fortunate to be without a positive test, and so we made it through to the midterm break in October. Though a week ago today, we had our first case, and so now we have 14 positive tests. We have no positive tests in the middle school or high school, so the older children and those in grade 8 and above would be at the vaccination age, so we attribute some to that. The supply of tests has been tricky. I was just talking earlier today with a person involved in the lateral flow policy, as well as the Ministry of Education, and I'm in awe at how much they're working to try to keep just slightly ahead of the curve. So as far as I know, and certainly in our school's case, we're asked to confirm our enrollment, the number of people on, say, in the current case, the 10 consecutive days, and they're making sure that we have just enough as the people wait for new shipments to come in. But it's going to be tricky because the spike has made it trickier for the 10-day flow, and hopefully we'll be able to get to the point where we can do the 2-day per week testing protocol rather than the 10 consecutive day test as the whole island and certainly our CIS community become more comfortable with living in a COVID world, if you will. So do we have enough lateral flow tests? Kind of. We're managing the distribution. So in the cases of the 10 consecutive days, we're not going, here's your 10. We're going, okay, here's 5. And then when we have more, we'll distribute those. And that hope too is being realistic that the likelihood that we have more positive cases coming around the corner. Presumably, what do we have? There's Pirates Week coming up, and there was Halloween for some just last weekend, and we can count on those types of events probably having a week lag or however long the incubation period will happen in people, that we can probably anticipate another spike. So we're trying to be ahead of the curve, but I think everybody's just barely ahead of the curve right now until the LFT supplies continue to come in greater magnitude that people couldn't have predicted.
Something I just wanted to confirm, because this wasn't in spelled out in the written guidance. So the government said with the surveillance program, which is everybody goes, or the screening program, right? So 2 COVID tests a week for students and staff trying to catch spikes before they happen. The government said they would pay for those tests. In terms of the surveillance, which is the 10 consecutive days of testing, if there is a COVID positive in the classroom, they didn't say they were going to pay for it, but it seems like what you're saying is the government is providing those to the schools, or at least yours.
Yeah, I think it's all the schools. I know we had Friday was a pickup day, and so was Monday, and the folks at the government who are helping with that distribution are being, I guess, very, very prudent. So whoever shows up first, it's not like, okay, your school's enrollment is this, that, here's how the logarithm is going to come out. You need whatever, 3,000 lateral flow tests. That may be the case, but it's being done in a fashion to go, this is enough to ensure you'll be okay in the short term, and the people behind you in the line will also be okay in the short term. So right now, as far as I know, schools are also being supported with in anticipation of the 10 consecutive days. My sense is once the island becomes kind of comfortable and settled in the future to all schools and presumably other corporations and institutions and organizations into that 2 day per week protocol, people will have that comfort level and will be able to continue going business as close to usual with a negative test. But I think the 10-day protocol, as I guess as robust as it is, may be hard to keep up with in the long run if we continue on this current exponential increase.
So just, and I know we're about out of time, from the emotional perspective or the mood of the school, the teachers, yourselves, this isn't the easiest thing to have to manage. Wasn't easy to manage, lockdown and virtual learning either, but this is also proving challenging. How is your school community holding up with this sort of constant pressure, but trying to maintain normal in the middle of it?
Yeah, so far holding up, but I think if you can, if this was a capacity, people are right at that capacity of remembering, okay, I'll take a deep breath. The schools didn't invent or cultivate COVID. We know that it's not always the right answer, but I think it's in the back of people's minds that when frustrations might rise, then when taking a step back to go, well, wait a second, we've been in-person learning since August 26th, 2020. And we are now in a phase where other places might have had to deal with the masking and the LFT protocols. Yet we're still in face-to-face, and there isn't a horizon, to the best of my knowledge, that says we'd go back to online learning. That we've been able to manage this all the way through. But is there times when we could all benefit from, I don't know, a deep breath, some yoga, and dare I even say a salad? Yeah, but I'm pleasantly pleased with the majority of our parents being understanding and cooperating. Even last night and early this morning with a positive test case, people are responsive to complete the permission form as far as the LFTs go and come in and get their children or wait and go through a quick training to be tested. But and our teachers too, running on. If we were a 6-cylinder car, and I know that we should be moving toward more hybrid and electric cars, but if we're a 6-cylinder car, people are firing on all 6 cylinders and maybe running their feet underneath like the Flintstones. So I think our families and our staff, certainly when that December starts to come along and Christmas break is on the horizon, I think people will be very appreciative of that. And of course, our students, we forget, I think, 2 things for our children. One is that they're probably more resilient than us as adults. And the other one is, at the same time, they're probably worrying about things at a greater depth than we can appreciate. And so talking with a 4-year-old, they're asking questions that you go, wow, I was hoping you're going to ask me a superhero question rather than a medical question. And then yet our children are still dealing with the normal things that they would have in school right now. Our grade 12s are wondering about the unknown of tertiary education and where am I going to be going and will I like my program? And April, you shared your experience of moving schools when you were about 13 years of age, and those issues that a 13-year-old would be going through are still there and in spades, not to mention because of, say, a pandemic where from a news-wise, we're bombarded with it, but then also the sophistication of social media and the complexity of real-time information that I can say that I didn't have to deal with as a youngster. You both probably had, but I'm old.
No, there was no internet that I can remember as a child. So yeah.
So I think we need to remember for our students that's for our children that's the case, and it kind of speaks to the importance of education, that when we're older we tend to worry about our soul, our relationships, and our health. And I think it's important for our parents and our staff to take a step back and go, there may be times when the quadratic equation might not be the most important thing that's going on there. And I say that as a former science teacher. So it's something that I said, no, this is critical. Yeah. But wait a second, we need to take a step back, take a deep breath. We do know on our island that the rate of mental health issues is in the vicinity of 2 times greater than the world mean. And so that's in a non-pandemic environment. So we need to be cautious of those things too, that life skills, I think, are paramount right now. Not to diminish the importance of literacy and numeracy, but those life skills are absolutely critical right now.
Jim, that was so good. It was. I'm like, this is really good, Jim. It is. Okay.
No, you're brightening my day because
yeah, it's really good.
I worry that for principals and directors of school, and certainly our politicians or the folks that I'm in contact with at the Ministry of Education and so on. I hope those folks too, are also reminding us, like, you remember the olden days when we used to fly on airplanes and the person would say, don't forget to put on your oxygen mask, but if you're traveling with a younger child, to still put your own oxygen mask on first. And I am worried that the number of people that are putting on their own oxygen mask first is becoming less and less. And so we hope those folks are doing that too.
Very, very, very good point. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Patrick, before we go, any last words?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a note, some sad news. The director of the Cayman Islands Public Library Service, a man named Paul Robinson, has died recently, and we got word from government over the weekend, so libraries were closed on Monday. And I knew Paul socially, as well as through reporting at The Current, and very condolences go out to the family and the staff and the friends. But I did have the privilege of interviewing Paul last November, where he kind of gave a big picture view of his, this guy, if you knew him, he's super passionate about libraries and reading and information and knowledge. And he really thought about libraries being this like kind of egalitarian access to information, which he says not libraries aren't becoming obsolete. They're becoming more and more important as information becomes more important and more rich. So right now on our site, we have the interview I did back in November with Paul, where he really gives this high level view on the library service locally and globally. So I just wanted to point that out and, make note of that.
Our condolences to his family and friends.
And the wider community as well. A lot of people reached out, just shocked and saddened. And, having grown up in that library, people like Paul are the thing that make it so that future generations can have, if not the same experience, a new version of that supports that escape into, the world of books. So we're going to miss the dude a lot, man. All right. And on that very happy note, but he still left us behind some good stuff. So I'm gonna ride with the happy part. Thanks everybody for joining us this week on EDBEAT. Jim, thank you again. We appreciate your spending a portion of your very busy morning at CIS with us. Of course, we want to encourage everyone to check out Cayman Current online. Patrick has an incredible amount of information on there, as well as coverage of the best stuff and sometimes the worst stuff going on in education. It's a nonprofit, so you can donate. And of course, check me out sometimes on Cayman Life TV, usually with Patrick, because he's my favorite. Now that I've met Jim, that could change though. Don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great one, guys. Jim, we hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Happy to come again. And thank you very much, April. Thank you very much, Patrick. And have a good day.